Hello and welcome to day 4 of the Summer Steam Game Festival Developer Livestream. We will also be doing a QA for today, so if you have any questions for us, just shoot them into the chat. I'll do my best to keep on top of them. We'll be showing off Breakpoint, our retro-inspired tribute to classic twin-stick arcade games. My name is Nick, one half of the studio developing the game. With me is Ed,
Hello.
the other half of the studio. We're joined today by Rob Ackley, developer on Due Process at Giant Enemy Crab.
Hello!
Attack for massive damage. How are you doing today, Rob?
Yeah, I'm doing alright. It's good to join you guys.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. So when you and I first met, Rob, actually, we met at the Seattle Indie Support Group.
As with many people we're bringing on.
A group less about being addicted to indies. It's a bit more about being indie developers and supporting each other through development. So at that time, you and Ed were actually working together. That's right?
Yeah, gosh, I'm trying to remember which project we would have been working on that.
I think it was Grid Pulse Legions, right?
That's what I was going to say,
That sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah,
that was a fun one.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. I was completely new to the Seattle Indies group, and I was just out there to meet some new folks, and you guys were the first people I actually met. That is actually kind of funny to think about that, seeing as how that was maybe 2 years ago now. Is that about right?
At least, I guess.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more.
Time flies, you know?
I know, yeah. It is kind of funny thinking about that now, and then chatting to you guys now in the state of the world as it is today. Yeah, it's just so weird and different. But back then, very bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, little indie developers.
I don't know, I've always been a little cynical.
Maybe that didn't come across to me when I first met you guys. You were just... Yeah. I remember probably talking to Rob a little bit more because he was probably just a little bit more outspoken about you guys' development, and Ed was a little bit more on the just actually developing. I just kept bothering Rob. I talked to most of the other folks, but I kept coming back to you guys because you guys were the more amicable folks, I suppose, that I had I knew Victor just by having tangentially met him once at the social prior.
Right, yeah.
And then, so I would go back to him and ask him how he was doing, but then otherwise I would ask you guys so what are you guys developing? What are you guys doing now?
Probably because we were just more regulars at
yeah,
those
I think so. You guys had,
events.
I think you guys also had more of a presence of just it's fine to chat with us if you want. As a new person, you're always trying to seek people who are kind of more neutral or welcome to you guys, rather than oh, don't bother me, or I'm feeling awkward, so I don't know what to say if you ask me questions, which is a good portion of the people there at the social. But that being said, it's a lot of people sort of working through their own kind of developer stuff, so sometimes you don't really want to bother them. They have legit reasons why you shouldn't go up to them and ask them questions and bother them all the time. Yeah, they have, not that, yeah, because they have periods of time where they definitely look more open to conversation. It's just not all the time, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I think
you guys.
Yeah, I think at the sport group, those co-working meetups, that's just the thing I generally enjoy about those, is just talking to people and getting new perspectives about game development.
Yeah,
so
for
I
sure.
generally just wanted to foster that, and I feel like Rob caught on to that as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because you guys were the co-hosts, right? Considered the co-hosts at the time?
I guess, yeah, or we were already at the time. That's right.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, at that point, yeah, I suppose we would have. Yeah, it's a social event, so it's that's what people come there for, right? I suppose.
Yeah.
I suppose
at least a little bit
there's
socializing.
Yeah, some folks I know would kind of use the event as a regular opportunity to make sure that they would make progress on their project.
Right, that they're accountable to their projects.
Yeah, but then at the same time, you're also showing up because other people will be there, and you can get help from them when you get stuck, or otherwise talk shop, all that kind of stuff.
Right, and also just show off some of your stuff and then get feedback on a lot of your projects.
Oh yeah,
pretty
feedback is key.
It is key, especially when you're still in a place where you're trying to figure a lot of design stuff out, which a lot of those folks are. I don't know, were you guys at that point? What point of development were you guys at with Grid Pulse at the time when I met you back then?
I feel like it was a largely technical exploration. We were, I would say I was optimistic and ambitious at the time, because I had just done a 1 month project, and at the start of that project, I was like, I'll do a 2
you were
month
feeling
project
invincible, I'm sure.
next. When
Like,
I
oh,
finished it-
dude, I can do this.
Yeah, that's right. That was your that 1 month project you're talking about was like the Minesweeper.
Right, yeah.
It wasn't
Like
a clone
kind of
because
variation.
you did some other stuff with it, but Minesweeper
Oh, was that
like
the one where
game.
you actually walk around on the grid and
Right,
you're-
exactly.
Yeah, okay.
It's like kind of pathfinding, almost like a maze, more like. But yeah, kind of Minesweeper inspired. But of course, the very next project, we decided to do RTS.
Right, of course.
Bit of a
easy, right?
Only
yeah,
natural.
exactly. Just one step above, you know. You just this is a regular gradation of skill and talent required. You know, you have your Minesweeper clones, and you have, you know, like
StarCraft.
right above that, you got StarCraft. It's normal progression of talent required to make games, as well evidenced in the game industry. Everybody knows StarCraft, one of the easiest game genres to make.
Totally. You know, you start with Pong, and then StarCraft's next.
Just comes right afterwards, naturally.
Yeah. Yeah, no, man, I learned so much working on that project, though. Like, yeah, we worked on it for a while and tried all sorts of things.
Yeah, that was. Would you say that was one of your first longer-term projects with the team?
Yeah, that wound up being like a 15-month project, and
Okay.
I think
Yeah, wow.
my current side project might be getting close to contending with that.
Approaching
I have to
it,
check the
okay.
dates, but yeah, you know, I was just thinking the other day about how one of the things I learned from that project, I learned from Ed actually, which was quantizing the vectors to like minimize the bandwidth. And that's exactly the kind of stuff that we're doing right now.
You know what's funny? You had mentioned that you used that in the job interview, and I remember that because this game actually uses it for a different purpose.
Oh, nice.
It's
I
for
see.
encoding the replays.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I was curious about that. Yeah.
Yeah, if you guys, I have no idea what you're saying right now as a
That is okay.
non-programmer.
This is payback for you talking about hard stuff yesterday.
But I think that's kind of cool. I think that's interesting. I just will give you the context that I lack context right now. That's what you're saying. That's so. That obviously you were in game development prior for a little bit of time. Walk me through a little bit of your history in game development prior to that, and then leading up to, and then also into what you're doing now, Rob.
Yeah, gosh, let's see. Like before then, I was like living in Nashville and was working for a record label. Actually, completely different industry.
Yeah.
But yeah, I basically had taken at least a couple intro computer science classes in college and found some opportunities to make use of that, and basically started doing some online courses for programming generally. A lot of those involved like game projects, and I was like, actually, this is super cool.
Oh wait, so you weren't already invested in games as a development career at that point yet? Sounds like.
Yeah, I guess like at the same time that I was really starting to exercise my programming skills, I was kind of discovering that game development was actually something I might be capable of doing just by the nature of the sort of assignments and stuff I was doing for these online courses and stuff.
Gotcha.
And yeah, so like at the same time I was getting started with like Python, I was also getting started with Unity.
Okay.
But yeah, basically like got involved with a group not unlike Seattle Indies over in Nashville, and then when I moved over here, I immediately wanted to find something just like it. And of course, that ended up being Seattle Indies. And
How was the scene in Nashville? What is that like? What was it like, I suppose, because that was a while ago now.
Yeah, you know, I got involved in like the Global Game Jam. That was like the first big thing. Definitely not as like many people involved as here. You know, like,
I think that just in general, Seattle has a like fairly large scene, so it's a little hard to compare to a lot of places to Seattle for indie game development.
Yeah, you know, it was a lot more kind of hobbyists working on their side projects and things, a lot of artists, you know. Like Nashville is just a very generally creative town. But then over here in Seattle, like there's, you know, we've got hobbyists and artists and so forth. But then there's the whole like actual like professional game studios and everything here too.
There's a lot of tech where hobby game development is definitely a side thing rather than something that, well, I suppose that's kind of by nature of the word hobby, but it's you have people at big tech giants like Amazon and Microsoft that are very clearly doing tech in their main jobs. And so as a result, you get fall off of those people where they're, even if they're remotely interested in games and they happen to come upon the Seattle Indies or any independent scene in Seattle, that they're actually fairly knowledgeable in tech and they're able to espouse some quite good wisdom for people who are interested in tech just by nature of their expertise.
And sometimes start their own game studios.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
That's one of
so
the
you came
super
here.
cool things about Seattle.
Yeah, for sure. So you came here, and Seattle Indies was kind of your first experience with like indie game development groups. How did you find Seattle Indies in terms of like it being hospitable, or what kind of groups it was?
Definitely
People
super hospitable. Like the indie support group that we were talking about earlier, that was like the first event that I started going to, and people were super welcoming. And Ed was one of the first people I met there. And we started doing game jams together and stuff, and just building one game after the other. And
Nice.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll actually
getting
admit
bigger and
something
better
to
all the
you.
time.
I think it was Andrew Hung at the time who started working on the RTS that you had proposed.
Yeah, that's right.
And at the time, I was like way more shy than I am now. Like I built that confidence up over time. But I had like major thoughts of FOMO basically. And so I was like, I gotta start working on something with people. And so I ended up just asking you, like, working up the courage and asking you to work on that RTS.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
And,
I'm glad you got involved.
Yeah, I'm glad I did.
Yeah, it's so crazy to me because I remember back when I first started on that, like I literally started with a game design doc, and I was like, I'm gonna write it all out, and then when I've got it all written out, I'm gonna crank it out like solo, like just that. There's no way we would have even gotten anywhere close to what we
finishing
did
what you were aiming to do.
Yeah. It's definitely
funny.
so much better to work with friends, and it's just more fun too, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And you everyone's making friends there too. That's actually one of the cool things about it, is that you're getting to know a lot of folks. Sometimes you're not going to work. In fact, you're not going to work with the majority of them, but you're just going to get to know them, and they're going to get to give you some information, give you some good feedback, and then some of those people, if you work well enough with each other, will end up being your working partners. So it's just kind of a good way of getting to know people in general that are of a like interest to you. So.
Yeah, it's funny because like one of the other guys, we all met through Seattle Indies, and Indie Sport Group was Andrew Hermes. He's now one of my coworkers. Like,
Yeah.
Like we applied for the open role with Due Process like at the same time, and I was actually kind of concerned because I was like, oh man, we're gonna be in direct
gonna have to be competing for the same role. Yeah, that's actually pretty funny.
I'm just really glad that there was room for both of us.
Yeah. That's actually convenient and good.
Yeah, it worked out really well that way.
So now that because going from your indie game development and then jumping into you working at Giant Enemy Crab, how's like quarantine affected any of the work or game development processes that you guys have been going through for you guys?
Yeah, our studio is here in Seattle, like over in Capitol Hill. But yeah, as soon as like things started getting dangerous, I guess, to go outside and stuff, like social distancing.
In terms of the in terms of the quarantine.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we basically started working from home. At a certain point, like it was like right before Inslee announced the lockdown, the official lockdown.
Oh yeah.
I decided like I'm just gonna grab all my gear from the office and take it home. And
you got lucky. Yeah. We're lucky with the timing there.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And I mean, fortunately, it's worked out pretty well because, like, I guess the nature of game development is there's a lot of kind of focused time when you're working on stuff. Like we definitely have to sync up still. That's important, but because there's so much like kind of focus time, like it's not so bad working from home. The key thing has just been really making sure that we continue to communicate and like are active on Slack, watching our Slack and so forth, and coordinating like regular play tests and stuff like that. But yeah, like we started doing daily stand-ups, and that really helped. Like we kind of did something like that before when we were at the office, but since we're like a small enough team, a lot of the time we would just like walk over to the other person's desk and be like, hey, we encountered this kind of design conundrum, like which way should we go with this, and you know, we'd hammer it out. Now it's we need to be like maybe a little more deliberate about it. I don't know if that's the right word, but yeah.
Sure. Well, you guys are very, oh my gosh, in consideration of due process as a tactical FPS, it's a very perfect word for that. Yeah, you guys are a pretty small studio, so you guys are really tight-knit, so I can imagine that just being like less of a meeting structure and a little bit more of a just always off-the-cuff kind of ask questions as they come up kind of studio.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, are you a kind of person who would like to, if you were given the opportunity, be in the office if there wasn't any like problems with that? Or do you prefer to be a remote kind of person?
I mean, I've definitely seen a lot of the benefits lately. Yeah.
Haven't had to change much in terms of the fact that for various reasons have had to be remote anyways, but it's I like to ask this question to other people just because I'm like, I know that in tech, like we're generally we could, if we wanted to, be remote a lot of the time, and then also we have like a kind of propensity to be like kind of social in like in indoor kind of people. And so there's kind of a stigma, I suppose you would say, for people who are just like, oh well, you know, welcome to my world, I'm, you know, inside all the time by choice, learn how to be me. kind of jokes going on. So I guess it's an interesting question for me to ask folks who are in the tech industry, because at this point now, oftentimes it's not really a matter of choice anymore. So now, you know, you don't even have the opportunity to complain about like, well, I have to be in every day. It's like, well, now, do you actually like it? Do you actually like being inside all the time and not even having the opportunity to see people face to face? Because changes things, right? When you might say you prefer one thing or another, but it is nice from time to time to get that other exposure for a lot of people, they'll admit.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because I definitely would describe myself as generally an introvert. Like I like to have my downtime, but like being sort of cooped up like this has definitely kind of magnified or revealed kind of a greater appreciation for like keeping in touch with people at the least.
Right.
Yeah. I've found myself doing like more planned multiplayer sessions.
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
Like,
with friends and folks that you're getting to know, or acquaintances and things like that.
Yeah, you know, like Ed and I have been playing a bit of like Half-Life 2 recently.
Which, to give some context for folks, Half-Life 2 is not normally multiplayer.
That makes sense.
But there is a mod that makes it multiplayer, and it makes for some interesting shenanigans.
Yeah.
That's been fun.
Definitely some Dr. Coomer moments, I'm sure. That sounds like fun, because that's actually because that reminds me of the spring cleaning event that I had gone through, and one of the suggested things was to go through Half-Life 2. And I actually played through a fair portion at the beginning of that, and I was like, man, I remember why this game was so well liked. I still like kind of going through that beginning portion. Yeah, I mean, like, obviously, you know, it's a game that it's a bit old by now, so you know, if you're not tolerant of older graphics, which it's not terrible, but it's, you know, it's older by now, and it's more aged, but it has aged fairly gracefully, and I think it still asks and presents some pretty interesting, like, I don't know, I won't say it's necessarily the most intelligent like city-state philosophical structure of like where a person like exists within the city-state and how they operate within an authoritative structure and stuff like that. But it is interesting and compelling still. Like I still find the narrative and the atmosphere to be quite interesting. What I did not remember is that one of the reasons why I remember it being such a compelling game is that they keep you on the move constantly in like the first quarter to third of the game. Like there's always narrative context as to why you need to be moving constantly on the move, and it feels like you're just like never hitting a checkpoint. You just got to keep going. Like you shouldn't stop. Like they're after you. The Combine is after you. You've gotta escape to the next checkpoint. But even there, you're not safe. It's like always this feeling of tense,
being pursued.
Like if anybody's ever seen like Children of Men, it's kind of similar to that. Not in as bleak of a sense, but it's similar in some senses where it's like you're on the run in many senses. You're trying to evade a lot of enemies or authority in the cases of Half-Life, and you're using all of these means to do so while you're running away. It's a very interesting, tense kind of situation, and I remember appreciating it back then, and I just had forgotten that that's kind of the way it was when I returned to it. It's pretty fun.
It's a game that I did not play at the time that it came out. So then, like, seeing it from like this vantage point is pretty interesting. Yeah. And I have to admit, I was like pleasantly surprised, like how deep the story and the game goes. I was expecting something like kind of smaller scale, but there's a lot going on there.
Yeah. Ed, has your perspective changed on that game, having returned to it?
A little bit. I've actually been doing my best to give Rob some perspective on like what it was like to play it back then.
So you played it originally when it first came out?
Not actually. I played it a little bit afterward. I guess my story is that this might have been middle school or something. I really wanted to buy the orange box.
Right.
Because I heard
after having
so many...
seen all of those Team Fortress 2 meet the team.
No, actually, no. I'll tell you more about that later. But no, it's actually because I'd heard so much about Half-Life 2, so I wanted to play it. And it was like, like includes both the episodes, so I really wanted to play it. So I guess it was a few years after it came out. But regardless, there's a few things that. Like in Unity, you can make a gravity gun so easily now, right? it's just drag and drop basically. At the time, it was completely revolutionary. I'm giving a few things, a few spots of perspective like that.
Gotcha. Yeah, that sort of dated. That sort of tell about the time and the era it was built in. Right. For sure.
All the new physics and stuff.
Yeah.
I know. I do remember, because I probably played it maybe a little bit after you had, because I was primarily not a PC gamer for a long time. I was mostly a console gamer, and when I played it, I was a little confused about some of the puzzles, because I didn't know that some of the puzzles were puzzles. Put this barrel. I remember there was a moment where it was like you had to put these floating barrels underneath this like tilting platform.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I was like, is this really like a... I was like, is this what am I supposed to be doing to solve the puzzle? Because I really didn't...
Because, like, is this a puzzle?
I didn't think about
platform.
anything... Exactly. I was like, I didn't think about the novelty of there being an active physics system, and the fact that it's not just about things going down, but things floating up in the water, is like a kind of... The way that the game was sort of couching itself within how revolutionary its tech systems were at the time. Like, it was a thing that was more ever present in gamers at the time because of it being much more relevant then, but something that if you're not actively thinking about, it might not immediately occur to you that that's the way that you have to approach the game, like that with physics in mind. Like I wasn't thinking about that, so I wasn't looking for things to like put underneath the puzzle, or like even paying attention to times where things were floating in the water, because it was entirely benign to me, because I'd seen that already in
happens
games.
Now.
I'm like, I've seen this in games, so of course it should do that. It was weird. It would be weird for it not to. Like it would just feel like an even older game if it would just drop in the water and not float. So all it did was feel kind of weird to me and remind me like, oh right, that's right. They were selling this game as like having all these really cool physics interactions. That's why this puzzle seems so weird to me, and it didn't occur to me that that's what I should be doing immediately at the time. Because when you're playing games, you sometimes have to like read into the developer's mind about what you should be doing at any given time. I mean, like, this happens all the time, right? Like, oh, I can't, this is an impenetrable wall, or this is an invisible wall, I shouldn't go over there, right? You're just sort of figuring out what the game developers are thinking behind the scenes. And so sometimes certain games kind of do it poorly, and they project that poorly, and they don't care about the context that the player is putting themselves into. But that game does a little bit better. I just had not understood the time that it was released in is all.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. So to revisit the comment about Team Fortress 2, I actually I didn't even know about the other games in the orange box at the time when I bought it.
It was only Half-Life for you.
Yeah, it was only really Half-Life. Like, I saw these other games and I was like, okay, that's cool, maybe I'll check them out. And I didn't really until a friend came over to my house and he was just like, what's this game? Let's try it. I was like, no, it looks dumb.
So he didn't hear about it either.
Yeah, but we ended up trying it, and then now I have like 3,000 hours in Team Fortress 2. So evidently we liked it.
Yeah, liked it enough to spend that much time. Yeah. So has there been anything that you're playing recently, Rob, in this Steam Games Festival Summer Edition? Have you tried anything out?
Just a lot of due process lately.
Okay. When you're making the game, I guess it's
very work oriented.
Yeah, we're planning a release very soon, so we're in that mode and preparing.
Home stretch mode.
Yes, exactly, and trying to iron out every bug we can find. So lots of thorough play testing and so forth.
Gotcha. Yeah. Tell me again what your precise role in development for Due Process is.
Well, I guess the role I was hired for was gameplay engineer.
Okay.
Although that's pretty broad, right? Yeah. That's kind of how it's tended to be. Like the studio's like maybe 20 people, like just under that. So we do wear a lot of different hats to a large extent. Like we're large enough that there can be some degree of specialization, but we're small enough that we still kind of work on a variety of things.
Broadly generalist about a lot of your stuff. And even if you guys aren't necessarily generalist about it, you guys will have to, by nature, just pick up some stuff that there isn't a specialist around for.
Yeah,
nice
so
throw
like,
it.
No, not nice throw.
to that, I will say you've been doing a pretty good job of mostly hitting your throws.
I'm trying to style it. It doesn't work all the time.
Anyway, go ahead. Continue. Rob.
I think one of the early things I was working on was our anti-cheat system, so it can detect if someone's modifying their client.
Gotcha.
Then I went through a phase where I was focusing a lot on the matchmaking lobby. We did a whole new redesign of how that operated. So I was kind of working with our UI UX designer as well as our general game designer to
about UI and UX and learning about that.
Yeah, definitely dove in a lot deeper into Unity's UI system than I'd ever done before. And I mean, honestly, it was something I used to kind of avoid. I suppose mainly because I was interested in doing more core mechanic kind of stuff. And
don't you love it, Ed? Don't you love working with UI and UX?
Believe me, I'm resisting saying, just shouting, yup, same here.
I mean, it's not like we hate it. I actually like it from a graphic design standpoint, but I do understand. It's
just the implementation
annoying. Yeah, trust me, it's annoying to me too sometimes.
Weird things sometimes.
Yeah,
we've had to do some weird things where we set a parameter like yield for 2 frames and then set it again.
Yeah.
Just in order to like toggle it essentially to fix it.
Oh, I see. Gotcha.
But yeah, no, I think my initial like apprehension with the UI system was largely to do because there's a lot going on there. It's a large system with a lot of details. But now that I know more about it, I definitely am a lot more comfortable with it, and I actually have kind of grown to enjoy working with it.
Actually appreciate it. Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's been a nice outcome.
You got Stockholm syndrome.
Learn to love the things that are keeping you captive. Yes. I mean, how else are you going to come to tolerate it, right? You're like, oh, I don't know how to deal with this. I'm just going to have to learn to know how to appreciate what I'm having to deal with, I guess. It's not all bad though. I'm making it sound like UI and UX is horrible. Like I said, I'm gonna back that up a little bit by saying I actually do like it. I like thinking about, like, I think about UX a lot, and this has more to do with than just UI.
Yeah, the UX side in particular, like more than the UI necessarily, is what makes it so interesting, I think.
Exactly. Yeah, it's sort of a tapping into it's more tapping into the psychology of the player and what cues a player into understanding how they're interacting with the game. That's a very key thing to understand in game development, I feel. Something that's overlooked a lot is how, we pay, from a games design standpoint, we pay a lot of attention to how players are interacting with in-game elements like combat and stuff like that, because those are the most active parts that usually they're usually front-facing stuff that
unless it's like a management game or something,
Sure, yeah, right, exactly. In which case the UI and UX are almost synonymous, but it's in games that are a little bit more action-oriented, where there's real-time elements, usually most of that focus is put onto the game's active parts. So you're going to be thinking about game feedback for when you hit a guy with an axe, or when he's shielded, what does it look like, and how is it different when you hit him, or like if you're like when you shoot a hoop, how does are you sure that you passed between players, or like that it scored? Can you tell how is the camera tracking? Is it clear to the player who they're controlling? Things like that. Those are all user experience kind of questions you have to ask, and they're all paid in attention to for the active standpoint of the game, and that's because all of those things require a lot more input for the player. That's what they're going to be looking at a majority of the time. That being said, there is a huge amount of time players spend in menus, just period. Like when you launch into the game, the first thing you're met most of the time, a menu. Press start to begin, right? Like if that doesn't come across to you as like clear or understandable to the player, or at least seamless, players notice generally, like, oh, this looks bad, or this gives you a bad first impression for how the game is going to be from here on out. They're not going to discard it immediately, but it is going to come across as not very professionally done or well done. So,
it's a lot like music in the regard that, like, when it's done right, you don't necessarily notice it, but when it's wrong, then you're absolutely taking it.
Yeah, I can completely imagine that to be the case. Well, then I guess in that regard, Ed, we'll probably think about some of this later, but had you played anything? Is there anything of notable value for you that you played in the Steam Summer Festival? Since Rob has robbed himself of time.
Wow.
I know. Pretty terrible. He has mostly been spent time doing. I know. Not playing games from the Steam Summer Festival, which I will say there's a lot of really interesting things. But anything stand out to you in particular? Just like one or two games?
Yeah, I mean, I played the Riftbreaker. I thought that was particularly interesting, the way they're mixing tower defense and action. I think there's a lot left to work on, obviously, because it's a demo, right? But it's a promising start. I really like just the look of the whole thing, honestly, is probably the biggest strong suit of it.
Right? I agree. That's probably what struck me first and foremost when I looked at that game.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's a lot of the reason why people pick it up in the first place.
There's that being said, there's a lot of really good-looking games in this Steam Game Festival. I'm really impressed.
Yeah, I've still got a few on the docket to try. I can't remember any others that I've right
off the top
so
of your
far.
head.
Yeah, but like,
Yeah.
want to try Backbone? Looks really interesting.
Oh, don't know that I've seen that one.
Yeah, it's kind of a noir, detective. Or that's that's
yes,
kind of what it looks
there's like a red panda on the front, like a red raccoon dog, or
Yeah, I
squirrel,
think-
or not squirrel. I mean, a red raccoon dog on
Are-
the
are
front, and then
raccoons?
there's two. Well, it's a Japanese version of it. It looks like a red version of it, doesn't it? Isn't it? Maybe I'm getting that
Dude,
wrong.
I have no idea. You're flooding me right now.
I didn't mention that, and to just say whatever I said was correct. Let's just say that. Let's just assume that. There are animals on the front. There are animals on the front.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So there's that one, and then sort of on a different note, there's also Chicken Police, I believe, is also.
Oh yeah, Tanuki. Yeah, I think that's the Japanese word for it. Yes.
Oh, you go for the raccoon, right?
Yeah. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
So yeah, on another sort of related but not related note, there's also another game called Chicken Police, which I believe is also in the
Oh my gosh.
in the festival.
Just so into that animal protagonist.
Animal noir detective games, new genre. But it's it looks like it's a similar game but more humorous take.
Gotcha.
Interesting to check those out.
Yeah, there's a few, and I think we're probably gonna talk about that if we happen to do Breakpoint After Dark, but we'll save that a little bit afterwards. For that, I was just kind of curious if just since we're sort of talking about it at the time, if there was
Totally.
anything.
When was the last time you played Breakpoint, Rob? I actually can't remember when I last sent you a build.
Oh gosh, yeah. Let's see, a month or so ago.
Yeah.
The last I played it. Yeah.
Gotcha.
What's new lately?
Honestly, it's mostly just been working on this demo.
It's a lot of back-end stuff.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a few things having to do with like any wave generation and timings and difficulty stuff, tweaking some manner of when and how enemies spawn in and to what degree they do. A lot of that stuff is just based upon feedback that we get.
Yeah, menu polish too, and just a lot of things.
Network stuff.
Gosh,
so.
yeah, there was I don't think I told you about this. There was a bug a couple of days ago that people were running into, like during the game festival.
Yeah.
And I just was struggling to find it. I spent probably the entire evening on Tuesday looking for the bug.
After our first stream.
After our first stream, yeah, because it was occurring during the stream. So I was, understandably upset about this.
Giving us a bad name.
Our
We're
stream was showing errors.
why? Yeah.
So I was determined to get to the bottom of it, and by the time I found out what it was already fixed. Because it ended up being a problem in Azure, the backend service we use for the leaderboards. That was causing an issue.
Nothing to do with us or our code at all. It was with our partner servers, essentially. So we were like,
I
oh
spent
my
so
gosh.
much time finding this thing, only to have it be fixed already.
Yeah. It's a little bit strange to think about game development being that way, but I guess you sometimes just chase some invisible ghosts until something solves itself. Gosh, yeah, they're
Definitely
just.
familiar with that.
Have there been any ghost stories for you guys? Because I know you guys are you guys have a very dedicated fan base for Due Process, and I'm sure there's a lot of people just telling you, I ran into this bug, I ran into this issue. It's like, okay, let's look at what they're talking about here.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of minor things, corner cases that can only happen in very unique circumstances. So sometimes reproducing those are really tricky. There's some things we've come across that have only ever shown up in a build. So then,
as opposed to the editor version of it.
Yeah, exactly. And oh man, those are just so time consuming.
Yeah, because you got to build it again to get a repro on the bug.
Yeah, exactly. And those are fun. But yeah, definitely gone through that process where we're all right, we know of we just discovered bugs A, B, C, and D, and all right, let's tackle A first. And then eventually we find the fix for that, and then we're all right, move on to B, all right, fix that, move on to C, and then we finally get to D, and it's man, I can't reproduce this anymore. What the heck's going on? spend a while on it, and then realize oh right, that fix for A that took care of it. Yeah.
that can be a little bit strange from time to time, trying to chase down essentially other people's bugs and things like that. But it's all part of the process, I think. In your guys' oh my god, did I really say that?
What? It is a due process.
Yes, it is all part of the due process of things. I've got to stop myself from these terrible puns.
I didn't even notice it. I'm so used to it now.
It's normally Rob's domain to make these terrible puns.
I know. Maybe he's rubbing off on me. It's so...
I'm holding back.
You're welcome to. You make me look a little less terrible right now, considering that I'm saying this terrible stuff right now. But
I was curious though, like, to what extent does your replay system help with bug fixing?
I have to think about that actually.
I don't think we've run into any particular issues that we've had to use the replay system to troubleshoot.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's mostly been bugs in the replay system that I've been fixing more than the other way around.
More than the other way around, that we've been using the replay system to debug. I feel like generally when we run into a bug, we have a fairly good idea of like what might be causing it. Ed and I pretty much share like responsibility for looking into the game for bugs every time we're playing it. That being said, I was a tester for years, so I kind of have a general idea of I have a general idea of what's maybe causing some potential issues, and getting involved with the development side of it has only expanded my knowledge of where potentially something might be, especially because I know more intimately than I did before, like what Ed is doing to, you know, like the development process, specifically what's going behind this game as opposed to a game that someone else is developing that I just happen to be testing. Like that's a different relationship I have with when I'm doing testing for like contracts or companies. So that has led to a little bit easier troubleshooting. That being said, we'll see whether or not people run into issues. It hasn't been too big so far, but you know, we're keeping an eye out to make sure that people aren't running into any problems. Especially the submission thing was something that we were keeping an eye on because that's such a huge part of the game. Wanting to make sure that people are able to submit their scores is a big part, because this is the score attack game. I mean, we want to compel people to submit their score to the leaderboard and then feel proud that they see it there, but then also that they're able to access it and then watch a replay of their gameplay, so someone else can see that they've gotten that score. So there's a big reason, like the leaderboard's such a huge part of our gameplay, that we need to protect that, make sure that it's held together strongly.
The thing I will say about the replays, I guess, is one of the original reasons I put it together was to serve as sort of an anti-cheat, so that, you know, if somebody submits a score without a replay, obviously, you know, they didn't get it. Or maybe there's a bug in my code too, that's possible.
Right.
But it hasn't been the case so far, at least.
Right. So to your point, I guess it's kind of like it is a way technically to troubleshoot. In case people are doing some things. It's just we haven't run into people doing anything weird so far.
I'm a little disappointed, actually, that nobody's tried to cheat the leaderboard. Don't take that as a challenge, or do, but...
Yeah, I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to hear him saying that to people, because it sounds potentially like we're encouraging somebody to cheap out on the leaderboard and do something weird with it, but...
I mean, you know, like, I haven't mentioned it yet, but somebody did finally beat my score on the leaderboard.
Yeah, I've seen it. Did you already play it?
I haven't, actually. I was waiting on that.
Okay, but, I am kind of curious to see it on there, because I was like...
In a similar vein, like, that gives me encouragement, because it's like, okay, somebody actually cared enough to invest enough time to, like, learn the game and beat the developer's score. So that's really awesome. But also, like, in a weird way, cheating or hacking is also kind of that.
Sure. It's beating them at a different game.
What's that?
It's beating them at a different game.
Exactly.
It's beating us at a different game.
Also a sign that somebody's, like, interested enough to do something anyway. It's illegitimate.
We had a case like that in our Discord today, actually.
Yeah, for due process.
This guy was saying he was trying to, like, hack the client to improve the performance for a guy who had, like, a lower-end device, who also has the game.
What? Interesting.
His, like, quote-unquote friend, not him, his friend.
Just asking for a friend.
Exactly. He was like asking these questions about that, and we were like, "Are you sure? Because we have this anti-cheat system, you know, if you modify the client, like it literally won't let you open the game.
Right.
But yeah, we like continued poking and prodding, and he kind of kept walking it back until finally he was like, oh, actually it looks like I didn't properly like save my changes or something, so it actually wasn't even running, and like so on and so forth. And we're like, all right, sure, bud. But yeah, you know, it's one of those things where it's like obviously like a real case of this would be concerning, like, cause especially for like a competitive game, you want to be sure that people feel like they win legitimately or they lose legitimately.
Right. Yeah.
But it in a certain respect, like it is nice to see that people care enough that they would want to do that, I guess.
Yeah. To try something a little bit strange or weird means that they value your game enough to try something strange or weird, I suppose, with it. Yeah. I remember Ed, when you and I were working on Crit Pulse Legions, the RTS, like we had very similar conversations.
Oh yeah.
Where we were like considering like these possibilities, and at the time we were like, you know what, that wouldn't be the worst.
Yeah, it's like if we get to that point, then I'll be happy about it.
We'll address that when it comes, but
yeah.
I guess
it's sort of luxury to even have to address it first, right? Because it implies that you have a player base enough to have to address it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. Since Breakpoint is such a leaderboard-based game, I was like, I feel like I really need to put in some effort to make sure like these people think these scores are valid at least, so that they're actually feeling like they're competing, and not just
and the fact that they are valid, not just think that they're valid.
Yeah, well, okay, right.
That, just to make sure that anybody who's listening that is
It's not like I'm
reality
falsifying anything here, sure.
Right? Yeah, that would be, these scores are valid. And to hit Ed's point again, like that he had mentioned before, a lot of the validation can be made through the replay itself. Like if guys are God mode cheating and making it so that they can't get hit, we can tell. We'll just see them glide through guys. Like it'll be apparent. Like you'd have to go through a lot of effort to edit the replay to make sure that you're somehow avoiding guys also. So there'd be some weird stuff you'd have to do to get around it. Not that I don't think you could do it.
It's not impossible.
Again, that's not a challenge. It's another thing you would have to think about if you were trying to cheat the system.
It sounds like your replay systems where you're doing the quantization.
Yeah, actually. So, I mean, it's a funny thing. I think on due process you're probably doing. So this is going to get technical for a minute, but I promise it won't be too long. I'm guessing on due process you're doing some sort of determinism. Yeah. So if you play back the same inputs on one side, you get the same outputs on the other side. So like, if I click my mouse at this time, it's going to hit this guy. On Breakpoint, we don't have that because we took shortcuts. Unity gives you a lot of valuable stuff, but it's not all the best stuff. So we're not deterministic. If you play back, like if I hit left at this certain moment, different computers will move you slightly differently. So we're not able to just record inputs. We actually have to record the game state of the entire game. So like every single dart position, every frame. That's sort of where quantization comes in. It's a method to compress those positions a little bit, or positions and rotations, I should say.
I suppose since you have like a relatively like limited field, that you're able to save a lot on the range.
Definitely.
Right. We're not saving like an entire MMO worth of information about player positions and skills and things popping off constantly. Like
for sure, since this is such a limited game that we're able to. Yeah, we're able to compress all of that data down to a manageable size.
Right. And I guess what you save on range, you can maintain in your position.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so the positions are decently accurate. I think there's stuff that I could be doing better to like make it look a little better. Occasionally, you'll notice the player jitter across the screen for a moment or something like that in the replay.
During a replay,
so it's not exactly accurate, but it's definitely accurate enough to be able to tell. Like, oh,
it has a sort of benefit though that's kind of weird is that it doesn't out-sync itself during like balance changes so much as you'd think.
Definitely, because like
that's one interesting thing.
Yeah, because if you ever play StarCraft, you'll notice that either I think in most recent versions they allow you to load old replays, but in StarCraft 1 you just couldn't load old replays.
Right.
because
Same thing
like the
with
game
like
had changed.
Smash replay. Right.
Yeah, so like if I click to shoot this guy, like the damage value might be different now. So
Right.
not the same thing is gonna happen.
Right. But if you are it's like, for example, what we're doing right now, if you record the state of everything per frame, then what happens is, regardless of the damage values, that character will just get destroyed regardless.
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter whether or not the new damage values have changed. You might see something slightly different. For example, if we change the speed of some of the attacks, right? Some weird things might happen, in which case you'll visually see something different, but the actual outcome will still happen the way it did before. So it'll swing for example, if at some point we change the lance to swing a little bit faster so that the execution of the attack feels a little bit more safe, or just is a little bit more safe. And as a result, the playbacks had played the swing attack of the lance faster, but the enemies would get destroyed at the old time frames anyways. So it was kind of a way of like, well, it looks visually different, but it is more or less the same replay in terms of functionality. Hello, Mr. Tizo. So yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like, it's got a benefit here or there with different kinds of outputs, and it depends, I suppose, on what kind of game that you're able to afford the different kinds of replay systems. I don't know much about quantizing itself, but I can tell you that like we've had a pretty good time with our replay system. It hasn't been hassling us in any way.
Sounds like you've done a good job choosing like which data you're saving in your game states, so they're like more resilient to future changes.
Yeah, decent job anyway. It's there's still a few things that are a bit wonky. I think, for example, if you listen carefully, some projectile sounds will not be played. So there's just a few things like that I think you could be able to pick out. But for the most part, I'm actually surprised at how well it's been going.
Yeah, I remember when you added in the replay system, and I thought that was super cool.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
that's a really good feature.
Yeah, I feel like it's probably the thing that we get the most like surprise reception from, where people are like, "Whoa, that's like surprise, kind of cool."
Yeah.
It's one of those things that we definitely were thinking to ourselves, okay, so we're gonna borrow a lot of style and attitude from the original Geometry Wars, and we're going to adhere to a very, very strict arcadey sense. We're not gonna deviate too far from that. But one thing we will do that is very modern is have a replay system that's taking advantage of some of the more modern tech stuff, because it's just one of those conveniences, right? If we can afford those conveniences from a modern sense, why not use them? Right? It's just why not? So,
and just to be clear, for anybody listening who's like, "Oh, they totally ripped the system from Devil Daggers," we totally ripped the system from Devil Daggers. Like that's definitely the original inspiration for it.
We're not shying away from the
Force.
fact that we're standing on the shoulders of giants here. There's lots of people with great ideas, and we're not afraid of saying like, "Dude, they had such a great idea. We wanted to be able to utilize the same thing that they did," and it's kind of great, actually. We're seeing a lot of, if you look at the Steam Game Festival, you're seeing a lot of games that are a result of people's inspirations, and I don't think their games are necessarily any different than ours in the sense that you can see the parallels from where they draw their inspirations. A lot of the games that I'm playing anyways in the Steam Game Festival, but that doesn't make them any less of a game. It just makes them a culmination of what has come before. Like, it's one thing to say, to see examples of games that are blatant rip-offs of other games, but especially when games are actually creatively exploring new areas and new mechanics and new functions, it's a little easier to kind of forgo that criticism and be a little bit more forgiving and just say like, okay, I can tell that they're definitely trying some new things. Like, for example, our game is very Geometry Wars, and we're very visually Geometry Wars. We're not shying away from that. That being said, like, I don't remember the last time Geometry Wars had a melee weapon. It's like, we tried to do these things because it's very deliberately our own style of game. We're like, yeah, we're going to be visually very similar to and pay tribute to a lot of old arcade games. But we want to do melee weapons instead because we think it's kind of interesting. We don't want to replicate Geometry Wars in exact fashion. We respect it. We just want to try our own thing. That's all. We just want to try something else. Well, that's going to put our hour just about to a close. So, Rob, if there's anything that you have to plug, is there anything you'd like to say now for anything?
Oh gosh. Well, you know, keep an eye out for Due Process. It'll be coming out soon, TM. And,
As is your guys' motto in the Discord, is it?
That's right. Yeah.
Is there a Twitter for you guys to follow, or a page for people to click through?
Yeah, I believe it's at Enemy Crab Games is our Twitter, and we've got dueprocess.info is the website.
So for all your law-breaking needs, you can go through dueprocess.info. Also, for all your tactical FPS needs, you can do both. You can do both through dueprocess.info.
If you want a game that minimizes the map knowledge advantage and puts the emphasis on team coordination and tactical planning, then that's the game for you.
Due Process is for you, for sure.
New maps every week.
Oh, nice! Wow, I didn't realize it was that fast of a constant schedule.
That's we've
cool.
got a whole procedural system for generating maps, and then our level designers go through and curate them and polish them, and then allows us to put out new maps every week. So
Gotcha.
yeah, it's all about the plan.
Cool. All right, well, that's going to put us at the hour. We're going to be back for another hour of just more casual after dark conversation. But for now, we're going to take a little bit of a break. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. This has been Breakpoint, our tribute to old school classic twin stick arcade games with a twist. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Stick around for more. One.
All right, welcome everybody back to our Breakpoint live stream. We're just going to be doing Breakpoint after hours, so we're mostly just going to be chilling out, relaxing, maxing all cool, and we're going to be looking at starting up with the top gameplay video for the top of the leaderboard here. Ooh. So let's find out who this is and how well they play this game.
So yeah, I mean, I actually saw this person at the middle of the top 10 earlier, like yesterday or the day before.
Oh, yeah.
So
right,
I definitely know they've been playing for like a little bit.
at least a little bit.
Yeah.
One of the days, a few of the days. So look at them. Look at them.
I definitely know they watched my top score replay too, because I there's a few hidden things that I think I was using there. I'm not sure if people have figured them out yet fully or not, but obviously it's easy to just kind of see like, oh yeah, he's doing this, like, no, I can do that. Wow, he did
that so early. What? He did that. You know what though? With 3 minutes, you definitely have time to do that. He probably just miscalculated his timing and it's just like, oh. Yeah. But for the first death, it's actually fine since you haven't built up any multiplier.
That's actually true. Yeah, you don't lose any multiplier.
So that's actually one of the things. Again, yeah, I know. That's why I laughed. I was like, all right, you can afford to do this, but in the other versions, I don't know if you can get away with that.
Right.
It's a little bit of a different kind of thing where the timing, you actually do want to last as long as possible, and dying like that does not do you any favors.
Yeah, but, there was actually an interesting thing that happened just a little bit ago. He threw his weapon because like this strategy just involves basically hitting as little as possible. So he threw his weapon into a crowd and then hit the center of it, but a bunch of them flew at him.
Oh, I know.
He was a little lucky that he didn't get hit there.
Yeah.
And to explain why that happens. Yeah,
right.
I guess to explain why that happens, if you hit the center of the swarm, it'll destroy the guys in the middle. But since you threw your weapon, like, you're not necessarily catching all of the swarm near you, so some of those guys will in fact get blasted back by the explosion instead of killed by it.
Because one of the functions of the explosions in our game is that if they're not caught in the explosion, you just get pushed back.
Right.
So they can get pushed back towards you because the explosion's away from you.
Yeah,
Something you kind of got to be careful of.
Yeah, you just got to be really careful about where you place your throws if you're playing like this. You know, even if you throw into a couple of guys, like if your weapon's low, you're generally fine just because, you know, you hit the first or second guy, and, you know, they're not going to get pushed back to you.
Right.
But if you throw into a big crowd with a lot of durability, you might not get so lucky.
Right, exactly.
Otherwise, this guy's doing a pretty good job, though.
No, he's keeping it on point.
Yeah, because you do need to place your attacks well still, even if you're playing this strategy, like throwing a lot, so you don't get overwhelmed completely.
Right. See, right now he was hanging around in the corner, but there is some space he has to give himself because that guardian is actually protecting in the middle.
A bunch of guys.
Yeah, a bunch of guys. So he's mostly just doing pushback on those guys, which means he's building up a lot of guys that might end up getting towards him closer to.
He's got it now.
Yeah, he's got to get out of that. Yeah.
Yeah, those mines though? No, they're only
this is interesting though, because I know that the end of the points, he's got 20 seconds to get 200,000 more points, which is higher than like many of the people on the leaderboard. It's hard enough to get like 100,000, 200,000 if you're being careless or if you're just not too familiar with the game. But he gets it within the last 30 minutes or 30 seconds, which is fun.
I mean, we already know the ending to this, but it's still fun to see, like, what's gonna happen. I think he's gonna get one more explosion here. Yeah, he chanced it and just got a bunch of guys. Wow.
Yeah. See, this is... Oh, see, and he got a close shave there. He's moving back and forth in the corner. Yep. So that's actually kind of funny there. So he died because the sharpshooter is actually shooting him.
Yeah.
The sharpshooters hit or shoot at where your position actually is. So we increase the likelihood later on for those guys appearing to make sure that you aren't able to do the strategy he was doing at the very end too much, which is just sticking around in the corner.
And just to explain one last thing before we move on to off of this, the demo timer did remain at 0 for a while, which happens sometimes in a replay if you are slowing down time a lot, because the demo timer actually does compensate for hit pause.
Yeah.
But since it's sometimes inaccurate, the hit pause will actually like it won't compensate enough for hit pause sometimes. So you will see in a replay sometimes that it goes to 0 and then like stays there for a few seconds.
Yeah, generally it's usually a result of dying near the near the 0 timer, because you will generally have like it'll slow down the time there, so it'll inflate the amount of time that you're spending in it since you slow in, slow out of the death animation. So
right, yeah, that's another thing that can cause it.
Yeah, so I mean, I know that he did that there because he got hit by the sharpshooter, and I'm just like, well, yeah, it's gonna look like it hit 0 for a little bit longer than it should have, because he just got hit. He literally just got hit. He lost a life here, so. But that was good. He got a few tough waves, managed to stick it through, kill off a lot of guys, and get a high score.
A crew multiplier.
Yeah, I mean, he came off with a funny beginning there, dying in the very beginning, but that is what it is.
Yeah, it just happens.
Yeah, it happens. He got away with it.
But yeah, that's what's up.
Has there been anything in the let's expand on our conversation a little bit earlier? Has there been the Steam Game Festival that you've been playing?
So I guess no, what were you gonna say?
That you have an opinion on.
Oh, that I have an opinion on. Interesting.
Just that you played. I suppose you can say, oh, I played this game and then that's it, but that might make for some boring conversation.
Fair enough. So I guess there was a game I played called I referred it to you. It was Cyberhook, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you end up playing it yet?
I did. I played a little bit of it. So I got to the level where you, it's how do you describe this? It's
was it the one with a bunch of purple bars?
Yeah, it was that one.
Okay.
Yeah. I just was like, I'm kind of tired, and I know what I feel like I need to do with this one, but I don't feel like doing it.
Right.
Like I feel like that would have been a little bit easier had the bars been like smaller, but anyway, before we go into too much detail about this game, go ahead and give the sort of broad overview of what this game is.
Exactly. So to give Rob and the viewers some context, this is a game about speedrunning. It's like really focused around going fast. You have this you have a hook, as you know the title would suggest.
A cyber hook, in fact.
Cyber hook. in essence, it really is just a grappling hook, but it only works on certain surfaces. There's other surfaces, that it just won't work on, or certain surfaces that'll kill you. And your goal is just to make your way through these, synthwave themed levels as fast as possible. Generally, they're very much aerial, like vertical focused levels. So you're going to be grappling around a lot.
You're floating in space usually.
Right,
like you're well, okay, space is kind of the wrong definition. You're floating in a synthwave sunset, but you're floating above the grid. In literal visual definition, but it is more or less you're just floating in the air, and if you touch the ground, you're like too far below. You have to restart. So it's not. These are levels that are essentially floating in space, so they encourage you to be in the air as much as possible.
Yeah. So it's genuinely pretty thrilling to play. I think they do a good job of like letting you build up speed and just maintain that speed for a long time. So you're really, really running through these levels like you're a not even a sprinter, dude with a jetpack basically. So like that part of it is really awesome.
Hooky jetpack.
Yeah, hooky jetpack.
Because you got so you're pulling towards things, which is very fundamentally different than a jetpack. But they do have the double jump in the air, which refreshes every time you hook something.
I believe, hook something or land on a surface.
Or land on a surface, yeah.
Yeah, and generally it's actually really permissive rather, because like you don't even lose momentum when you hit the ground. You just keep running like at the same speed. Yeah.
Right.
So that part of it is like really. I feel like that's actually a decision not a lot of games would make. So like, kudos on them for doing that, I guess. But yeah, I think the criticism I had of it, the main one, was just that the level progression seemed a little bit off.
You mean like it was? So why did you guess the purple ones was the one I quit on?
Mainly because it was the one I quit on.
That's funny. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it was a little. I felt like I hadn't built up the skills yet to be able to tackle that.
To do that,
basically.
yeah.
That's what I mean about the level progression. It's not that it was a bad level per se. It was just that, like, man, I felt like I would have needed to try that level a lot to be able to get through it.
Right, which means that it's going to repeat. You're going to be. It's going to feel.
I'm going to be in the same place for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Whereas had there been another level, you at least would have been that built you up to that ability. You would have been able to get good and then also encounter another level that's it feels a little bit different.
Yeah. And that could just be a function of it being a demo. Like they may have cut out a bunch of levels in the middle.
Oh yeah, undoubtedly, almost undoubtedly. So yeah, so this caveat this criticism, or at least this point being made with with the fact that these are lots of games being made in progress, and it's clearly a demo.
Yeah, or even it's also just unfinished. Like maybe they're still working on it. Who knows? all sorts of reasons.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's. I think I am looking forward to kind of seeing where that game goes, at least.
Yeah. I enjoyed it.
No, you go first.
I enjoyed it too. And I had they do some funny thing. I like how you pump your fist in the air when you jump. It's kind of a funny. I'm generally not too much a fan of the like kind of cheesy, like too cheesy kind of representation of things, but I did chuckle a little bit when he does that.
It's just so
they just wanted to make it super clear to the player that they're like, you double jump, like you're like pumping upwards. So
I feel like that's why it's permissible in this instance, is because there's a purpose to it. And they just happen to make it something that's kind of funny.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fine. It works perfectly fine as an indicator that you're double jumping, and also it's funny.
Yeah, actually, I was having a bit of trouble acclimating to the skill set required of me to get fast in that game. Partly because it does a few things that I'm a little bit not used to, because it's kind of unconventional in the sphere of how to say this, aerial acrobatic FPS games, I suppose. Because it's not necessary. I actually wouldn't describe this as a parkour game, despite
the description saying that.
Yeah. Despite. Oh, does it say that?
It actually does. Yeah. Why? Okay. What else did you see?
Can you not wall run? Can you wall run in that game?
I think so.
Okay, because if you
Like, it
can,
seemed
it
like
has
you
not
could?
been super clear to me that
Yeah.
that's the case. In most cases, butting up against the side of a wall has been a negative thing to me. Like, I slow
absolutely.
down like crazy. So I'm just like, I never want to touch walls. It was not illustrated to me in the tutorial, and most of the times I did hit a wall, it like slowed me down. So I just never touch walls on the side. In fact, touching walls it just feels bad. Like, it feels bad to touch something because it feels like most of the time I'm just going to slow down.
Right.
So what I usually orient myself around, and I think a few levels prior to the one I ended up quitting was the one that I enjoyed the most, which was the one that has a bunch of floating blocks in the air that are just like single blocks. They sort of S-shaped snake around blocks that you can shoot out.
Yeah, gotcha.
And I had fun with that level because it was the one that was the most swingy, I guess. I was most Tarzan-y in that
Gotcha.
one. Where I was like, oh man, like there's so much free space. I can do what this game does best, which is just like swinging in the free open air. I realized that, I mean, that's kind of hard because you gotta aim at the blocks as you're swinging in the air. So maybe they didn't want to rely on that being something that's like a skill you have to use. So they just made it the gimmick of that level. But that being said, it's kind of when that game is best. Like that, it feels best to just be kind of swinging in the open air and just snapping on things and not touching anything, just getting faster as you swing. I feel like that's when that game feels best. So that's the one I enjoyed the most, and I felt like I had the most control over myself when I was in that level. It does a few things, like I said, that are a little bit unconventional that I had to learn how to orient myself around not being able to use, like the lack of wall running or running a. I don't know. Let me caveat that by saying, like, I don't know if you have wall running in the game, but if there is, then it felt like I shouldn't be doing it. In general, it felt like I shouldn't be touching platforms as much as possible. Even including the ground. I don't know if I felt like being on the ground was good because the better alternative that I felt like
always speeding yourself up for sure.
Hooking. Even if you're on the ground, I would hook the ground, and I saw that I was going faster, and this actually brought me to another point that I felt was a little bit difficult for me to handle, and that is the controls, because the left click is hooking onto something.
And then right click is fire, which is definitely backwards of how most games would do it. I mean, the thing is, it makes sense because it's the primary action is hook in this game, not shoot. But it does still feel backwards just because of the normal conventions that you're used to.
You might not be used to that. That was actually not necessarily my issue. It was more that space is both jump and unhook, and those are contextually different things in my mind. So if I don't realize I'm not unhooked to something, I won't jump. I will instead just unhook. So what I felt like I wanted was like an option to do click and hold. And then like just let go of the left click to release myself. I mean, like, it is kind of weird because when I finally learned how to control myself a little bit better, which was during the level where I was just being Tarzan, I was like, okay, I feel like I understand this a little bit better, and I actually know how to control myself a little bit more. That being said, the only reason why that was the case, I felt like, was because I had so much time to unhook myself using the space bar. Like, I was just in the air for so much more time that I was able to just, like, be allowed to fly around and given some free time and extra space to unhook whenever I wanted to, as opposed to it being a very time-centric kind of thing.
So yeah, that's Cyberhook. I mean, I feel like whoever's watching should definitely go check it out because I still think it's a cool experience. It's the sort of game I've actually wanted to make, speedrunning, parkour-like game. So I think it's still an interesting thing to play.
Oh, definitely.
Enjoyable to go fast.
Yeah, I think it has a lot of potential, and it was fun to play during the time that I was playing it. So definitely check it out.
Actually,
go ahead.
The game I think Rob should play, if he's still around anyway.
Yeah.
I'm actually not sure since he's muted now, but I think Rob should play the Rift Breaker.
Oh yeah, sorry about that.
All good.
No worries.
If you have time, go check out the Rift Breaker.
Why should he play the Rift Breaker?
I'll have to look for that.
Well, first, do you have any? Have you seen it at all, Rob?
I haven't. No.
Okay, so it's an RTS kind of a tower defense action hybrid. So the reason I think you should play it
Base
is
building?
yeah, base
That's my
building.
thing.
Absolutely. So yeah, I know you're really into like RimWorld and that sort of thing, and
Yeah.
you know, I think we've talked about StarCraft a little bit before. From what I could tell, micro is not especially like the thing you look for in games. Like the
Yeah, I
micro
tend to
strategy.
like the kind of grand strategy kind of style games.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So
Yeah.
while the Riftbreaker is like partially an action game, I think they generally take their pacing pretty slowly, which you know is sounds kind of like it's damning praise, but it actually is praise in this instance. So I think it puts them in a niche that not a lot of other games inhabit.
Right.
So
Oh, I'm looking at some of this, and it looks like they've got like a massive swarm.
yeah,
Yeah, Zerg's going in. That's the tower defense.
you'll be interested in the pathing stuff too, just
Reminds
from a
me,
programmer perspective.
yeah, you know, I'm fascinated by like they are billions. Like,
Yes.
I wonder if they're doing like a flow field kind of thing.
Yeah.
Here, I love that.
I think that's the comparison that a lot of people had made was this is Billions meets other RTSs or like StarCraft or something like that.
Right.
Okay, yeah, this looks interesting.
Although that being said, the central unit control thing reminds me a lot of Air Mech, actually.
Oh yeah, that's right. I actually had forgotten that. Like I never played Air Mech, but I do know it's an action RTS hybrid.
Yeah, it's an action RTS hybrid. So in that, I mean, there's a little bit less of the whole like tower defense kind of thing going on there, which is Riftbreaker's more kind of unique aspect, but
Right.
you know, definitely the whole single unit you're able to fire, free fire kind of thing I felt like Air Mech did that really well.
Yeah, I'll admit, it might not have been my style of game just because I'm so used to playing StarCraft and a
Right.
lot of faster paced
Yes.
RTS.
It's more fascinating. It's more
But,
fascinating as a hybrid.
yeah.
It definitely, if you're like expecting a pure RTS experience, you might come in at the other side a little bit, or come out the other side a little bit disappointed.
Right,
Like,
right.
oh, that's not what I expected. It's like, yeah, it's a bit different. I mean, it requires a little bit of a different head on your shoulders to navigate through, because I feel like it doesn't necessarily feel exactly the way that you would expect an action RPG to feel, but it doesn't
definitely.
also exactly feel the way that an RTS would feel. So and that's kind of the tough thing to handle with a lot of hybrids. With hybrids is
It's like you're taking the expectations of two player bases and meeting
Right.
neither of them, basically.
knowing where to compromise and whether or not the merging of the two genres actually benefits you or benefits the game design is actually something that's really interesting. And when you're actually able to do it successfully, obviously it's really good. But
Right.
it's being successful in those realms that's really challenging, because there are genres for a reason, because having that kind of player vocabulary is really important for people to understand what they're supposed to do from the get-go, and it's just a lot easier. Like, we're using that a lot in Breakpoint, for example. Like, we definitely are using a lot of visual cues to say, like, oh, you know what this is. This guy's coming at you fast. He's a bad guy. He's pointy. It doesn't look very friendly to you. We're using the convention of, if they touch you, you're damaged. You know, that's old school gaming for you right there. So it's definitely, we're using a lot of conventional standards to kind of speak to players who are used to these kinds of games. That isn't to say that we're ignoring people who are completely new to the genres. We still have, you know, the tutorial like intro in the beginning, but we do try to get out of your way as much as possible to make sure that, you know, we're not sort of holding your hand too much. We want you to be able to get into the game as fast as possible. So I feel like games like Riftbreaker and games like Air Mech have a lot of challenge to handle because of what they're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's merging two different genres. You guys, when you guys were making Grid Pulse Legions, what kind were you guys mostly trying to make that mostly a by the books RTS kind of thing, or was there anything? I remember when I spoke with you about that last, Rob, you were saying you wanted to do a little bit more of some of the base building stuff a little bit more experimentally. For example, the lines of resource.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like definitely that game, that project was like very classic RTS inspired. You know, like for me, that was like Age of Empires. One of the things I'd love to do in that game was just build like massive bases and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. No matter how impractical it might have been. Again,
I may say again, you should play the Rift Breaker.
Yeah, I remember like, yeah, we all kind of brought in our sort of nostalgia for the RTS games we used to play, but yeah, I remember in Age of Empires, it might have been in the custom map mode. I think that's what it was. Like, I remember creating like my own version of Minas Tirith, just like successive layers of walls and stuff. Oh,
wow. Yeah. That's funny.
But yeah, you know, I definitely found like the base building part really interesting, and wanted to focus on that. And I think our exploration of like the power supply networks was kind of focus of that, like trying to wind up creating a more sort of maybe not natural, but like a kind of what you would expect out of a base, which would be more like concentrated around hubs as opposed to like little bits here and there spread out all over the place.
You literally had lines of electricity, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
Between bases. So that was supposed to be a deliberate choice of like how far, because you described one of the aesthetic reasons why you wanted to evoke the Roman Empire, for example, in the some of the visual imagery of the game was because you felt that some of the arming strategy of what you were trying to evoke was the risk of spreading yourself out too thin.
That's right.
And having to protect strongholds that are valuable to you, and how much resources you spend to protect those strongholds, which is something that you were like kind of fascinated with at the time.
Yeah, I remember at the time I had been like into this ancient Rome podcast. I was listening to a bunch of that, and they were speculating about the many various different reasons that
the fall of Rome happened.
Exactly. And I remember just being really, really interested in particular and like the nature of the supply chains, like becoming too logistically complex, I guess, and like spreading themselves too thin, too far from Rome, I guess, and being that being a contributing factor among other things to the fall of the Roman Empire. So we wound up like discussing a variety of ideas about like what ways could we kind of replicate this idea of like supply chains through the design and the mechanics of the game. And the electricity lines were like one of those ways we explored that. That was one of my favorite things to work on in that particular project. That was
so much so you were looking up mathematical algorithms to correctly emulate the lean and sway and
that's right.
curvature of the power lines themselves.
Yeah, you know, I could have just as easily done a parabolic curve, but I learned about
but you didn't want to. Yeah.
It had to be
catenary curves, that's right.
That's right.
Oh my gosh.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing that it's like whereas an artist might be like, I just really love like mushroom houses. I want to put mushroom houses in all my games. It's like a mathematician or a programmer might just be like, I just really want to recreate cable curves correctly in my game.
It was definitely probably like it would have been much simpler and potentially even more performant just to calculate a parabolic curve, but instead I was like, no, I want to do this right.
I'm sure somebody would have noticed, some mathematician out there.
I know, right?
Of course.
Game designers focus on. It's very funny.
I not that anyone may have noticed, but I do really love when games have this like little details that someone comes along and they notice it and they're like, oh my gosh, they took the time to add that in. That is so cool.
Yeah.
I love that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, for sure. I totally.
Just to recap
Totally
for
agree.
anybody joining in, we're talking about Grid Pulse Legions, which is the RTS Rob and I had worked on a little while ago. And I think actually an interesting thing about that game is, so Andrew and I, Andrew was the other guy working on this game. Had
The
both.
site's still up.
Oh yeah, it's still up, dude.
Yeah.
I think you're paying for it.
Double check. Right, I was like, man, did I remember to like?
That's where those
renew
$15 go
everything?
went the other month. That's funny.
So I think Andrew and I had both primarily played StarCraft as our primary RTS. And then Rob was coming from the other direction, which was
Right,
Age of Empires and Command and Conquer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, RTSs specifically, not
Yeah,
just
specifically RTSs.
Yeah.
So I think we ended up having somewhat different ideas of where to take it. Not actually in terms of like the macro design, but more in terms of the micro level strategies. Just because StarCraft is so micro heavy.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting exercise in kind of like collaborating with different people on.
I think that's one of those other reasons why I'm so glad that we wound up teaming up to do it, as opposed to me just like going it alone. Because like bringing both those kinds of experiences, I think, made for a better game. Like being able to like cater to those different interests, you know, regardless of where your RTS nostalgia specifically comes from.
Right. So yeah, it was kind of it resulted in an interesting hybrid, and while we didn't, keep going with it, I still think it's a really cool project that still is up somewhere that people can play the demo of.
GridPulseLegions.com.
Yeah. Don't expect it to be very polished, but it's there.
Demo is available.
Yeah.
We've got the pre-alpha trailer still on there.
Still got that general voice.
Oh yeah,
In the back of your throat there, yeah.
I don't actually remember why I was listening to the not the trailer, but like some gameplay again. Just randomly the other day, I was listening to some Grid Pulse Legions footage. I did have to kind of laugh about the voices. Just it's very obviously just me and Rob.
Yeah. Yeah, for as far as the other games that I think all of us have been playing, I've been trying to keep track of the Steam Game Festival, other games that have been available. Mostly I've been playing like a lot of our friends or kind of like friends of friends games.
Just people you're surrounded by or people you've been surrounded by.
I've been trying to keep track of their development and just seeing how everybody is doing, like just small notes, for example. Like I played our friends from Unbound Creations. I played their Rain on Your Parade. Guys who made, or Guy Kupizaur, who made Nova News Headliner. Yeah. Rain on Your Parade is a little bit more about like a
lighter experience.
Silly kind of experience. It's got cloud. You're featuring a cloud that you're messing with people. You're raiding on their parade, so it's just kind of a cute little.
Did you get to play that one?
I did. I did.
Nice.
It's got some. I remember playing the smaller experience when he was still trying to determine whether or not it was something worth pursuing as a submission to 6. I think it was last year, and since then it's progressed a lot. Some pretty cool ideas, some pretty cool ways. It's still fairly simple, so it's very approachable for a lot of people. But there's some clever stuff going on there for sure. Some of the ways that the levels are generated. There's some kind of cool things you can do as a cloud you wouldn't necessarily think about because Cloud is such an unplayed kind of character. Right. So
we gotta explore all the space of things you can do as a Cloud.
I mean, it's one of those things where it's just like, oh right, acid rain is a thing. So it's like at some point in time you can be an acid cloud and rain and destroy some vehicles. It's one of those things where it's like, that's cool. You can spout some oil and then create some fires and just in general be a nuisance to people, to those pesky humans. I played a little bit more of our friends, the puzzle. We featured Patrick on the first day. I played their game, de-leveled a little bit more of that. Definitely breaking my brain a little bit. A few and I also felt a little bit clever because I'm pretty sure there was some solutions that I came up with that I was like, I don't think this is the way that this was intended. But it's kind of clever to be to be breaking the game, and also it doesn't break the game to do that. What I'm more curious about is that because of his speedrunning background, I am curious about people essentially instituting, if anybody tries to speedrun that game, instituting the unofficial way to solve it as the faster way to solve certain levels. I feel like
Patrick already knows about those.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. There's something. That's what I'm thinking. I'm just like I'm trying to think about it from their perspective, and thinking like I wonder how much he's sort of aware that like, oh, I know, like there's some things that you'd be doing that'd be kind of weird, but the official way is a little.
Did you happen to catch the leveled bonus stream?
Not the bonus one. No. I caught the original, the other stream that they were doing the other day. Why did they do something on their bonus?
Yeah, he was playing a few of the bonus levels, the ones that are like really hidden.
The harder. Yeah.
And Jesus, you can tell where this came from. Like you can tell he has a speedrunner background just from those.
Yeah.
He's like, you just have to do this maneuver where you have to like flick one square left while the other cube is on a wall, and then hit right immediately when the other square hits a different wall. I
explicitly like the word maneuver in this case, because maneuver implies that it has a name, because it's almost...
It's the JP like, Nance.
Yeah. It's the Nance maneuver. Right. It's like, it's the weird thing where you do when you are barely touching the pixel of this other cube, but you're able to cause a velocity transfer over to the other cube. It's like, wow, it's so specific, unique, yet it has a name for it because it's so utilized. I played a little bit more of just basically moving off of that topic to a few other games. I played a little bit more of the Going Under demo. That was still very fun, still very frenetic. They did do some tweaking for some stuff. Oh man, I'm forgetting his name, but the vampire guy.
Entrepreneur?
Yeah, Entrepreneur. God, so clever.
He's a vampire with a Tesla.
Yeah. He actually works this time. I remember before he was I don't know if it was, he was a little bit broken. But before, I would take his curse, and then I would be cursed forever or something like that, and I wouldn't actually get too many bonuses. Something would happen. I don't remember exactly what, but this time he actually got some interesting trade-offs. The first time I literally walked into the fire that he has in his room, not realizing it was active, and I died as a result of just sort of being an idiot and walking into his flaming cauldron fire. Yeah. I was like, nice. I'm just gonna enjoy this game. Oh, I'm on fire. What is happening?
I'm sure this isn't gonna do anything.
Yeah, but yeah, it feels like there's a few. I remember thinking this game is a little harder than it looks like. It feels much more balanced now, at least in ways that make it much more approachable, and in ways that make more sense. I'm specifically looking at you, Broom Goblin. You are way more manageable now. It's
the
awesome.
Guy that charges at you.
Yeah, he like leans back. He looks like an old-ish like goblin man, really? Like tiny. He looks tiny. He's got
he's tiny, but I don't know if he's supposed to be old.
Well, his eyes, he looks like he's got that crow's feet kind of look, the old man look. Yeah. You know, like a line for your eyes and then crow's feet on the side. I don't know if he actually has crow's feet.
I guess he's like a janitor, so maybe.
He just looks like a janitor, like an old friendly janitor who's gone senile and angry at you. Or inside his cleaning quarters, and he's got to brush you away. Yeah, that's what he looks like.
They were very good at keeping away from you previously.
Well, they were a little too good at jumping back and then being a frickin' ninja and then stabbing you with their broom. They were very fast. This time they're a lot more manageable. But in general, I was like, this is so fun. In general, it was already fun before, but it's I feel like nowadays
they tightened up a lot of the numbers.
They tightened a lot of the combat a little bit more. So it's anybody out there, definitely give it a try. Going Under.
They got a developer spotlight too.
Yeah, really cool.
Yeah, on the Game Festival page.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Looking forward to playing that one.
Yeah, it's super fun. Lots of character, lots of style. Moving away from some of the things that our friends have been making, just kind of going to the general territory. I played Raji, an ancient epic, based upon it's an
PS5
ARPG
showing. I believe it was there.
Oh, was it? I don't know if I caught that.
It's one of them. Maybe it was PS, or maybe it was the PC Gaming Showcase. I can't remember
I think
which
it was
one.
PC Game Showcase, yeah. But pretty cool, pretty beautiful looking game actually. That's one of the things that appealed me to it. Very unique atmosphere. It does have somewhat of a what feels like a fantasy setting, but it's got Hindu gods as its essential backdrop. So pretty beautiful, pretty cool looking, interesting sort of action-oriented ARPG movesets. You can jump off of walls, you can parkour up them, and then use specific moves as a result of the messing around with the environment. You can do this kind of like pole spin move where you light your spear on with electricity and you spin around the pole. It's got some pretty cool like flashy moves to check out. So if anybody's kind of like into ARPGs, it's definitely worth a look at least. I played Grounded, which may be a little less indie, I suppose, being made by Obsidian. But
gotcha.
yeah, it's the Rick Moranis, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids in your backyard kind of game. It's man, I was confused about that game at first. I was like, what am I doing? Why am I shrunk? What is happening?
I have to ask though, Obsidian normally does more serious games, right?
I know.
Like, this is such a strange departure.
It's thematically a little different than what you might expect from Obsidian's games, but it's definitely a welcome change of pace. First of all, I have to say it looks beautiful. You're wandering around in the shape or size of like an ant, even a little bit smaller than an ant. So you're really tiny, and it's just really cool to kind of wander around in an area that feels familiar but also scary. Man, some of those bugs when they leap at you, I actually have like, like I don't like it. It's because it's something that's familiar to you. Like I don't bat an eyelash at like aliens and scary things like that. Yeah. But when a wolf spider is the size of like a house and is jumping on you, it's freaky. It's those humans have an aversion towards legs of insects. Like that just
this furry like thin legs.
I don't know what it is, but the idea of like I don't know. That's like those things can penetrate your skin and stab you. Like
well, if they're that big, sure.
They're scary. And I mean, it's forgiving in the fact that they can, you just respawn in that game. So it's fortunate. But that being said, it still doesn't stop getting me every time they like leap at you, and it, like it's scary. But that fortunately they have like, and they're like, are you a arachnophobe? Because we have some giant spiders in this game. So we have a mode that tones this down. It doesn't change the function of everything, but we'll change it. I don't know if they change it to something. I don't know. Yeah, I actually haven't picked that mode because I'm too big manly gamer guy, but I'm glad at least they allow you to switch that off, because I'm sure there are some people for whom that will be totally a not cool thing, but would like the other experience otherwise. Because otherwise it's just a sort of an explorathon. It's kind of like Don't Starve. It's a crafting, harvesting experience. You go around in your backyard, pick up dry grass and mud clumps, and create like hats from your various foes that you have felled. So you can create a samurai helmet from your ant buddies that you've felled. It's a pretty cool kind of thing. I still am a little bit perplexed about. This was the thing that confused me a little bit. I tried to build some of the more complex stuff, but it required what was called a crafting station, but the game doesn't really tell you how to. You have to explore a lot in the game, and you're limited by 30-minute chunks. So once your 30 minutes are up, you basically will have to restart the demo again, and I haven't gotten far enough to explore how to get to the workbench to create some of the more complex stuff that will help me survive against some of the bigger enemies, including that wolf spider that I'm freaked out by. Otherwise, kind of a cool, interesting game to look forward to. I'll be looking forward to checking it out when it actually releases. Not that it needs any like huge push, because I think they're going to be on Xbox.
All the platforms, basically.
Yeah. No, what's that thing called? The one on the PC?
Oh, Game Pass. Gotcha.
Game Pass. It's gonna be on Game Pass.
It makes
which
sense since Obsidian is part of Microsoft
you're
these
right.
days.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's Grounded, also part of the Game Festival.
Yeah.
Feel free to check it out.
Yeah.
Real quick, Zictor in chat says, I like this game. I like you, Zictor.
Zictor. Yeah. Thank you for checking us out. Similar to what I was trying earlier, similar to Raji, I played the Dreamscaper demo, a little bit of that. ARPGs are kind of our thing. Yeah.
Right, Dreamscaper is another ARPG.
Yeah. And that one is definitely fun. Keep an eye out for that one. It's definitely got the chops to be a very interesting, more serene atmosphere kind of styled version on the other end of the spectrum visually from like Hades, which is like hell and demons and stuff. Not that Hades is like
it's so grim.
Doom. Yeah, it's not like Doom or Devil Daggers where it's like blood and stuff, but it is like the underworld. So Dreamscaper is more dreamy, serene, peaceful, but it's got the combat chops. It's a little bit slower than I personally am used to, but I still feel like it's very in line with what it's trying to, what the kind of gameplay it's trying to have. So it's also just straight up, it's beautiful, like it's cool looking. I like it in terms of the way that it looks. So yeah, check out Dreamscaper and Raji if you're into ARPGs. Well, it's got so one thing I will say about the difference between the two is that Raji is a little bit more linear, at least the demo is, and Dreamscaper is more roguelike, so it's more similar to Hades in that way. Or it doesn't have the 2D side-scrolling aspect, but in some ways it's similar to what's the Rogue Legacy in that way.
Right,
like you go back and you upgrade yourself in Hub World. It's got that repetitive nature to it. I played 30XX. I told you this.
Yeah, the Mega Man-like game.
Yeah, the Mega Man X/Zero-like game.
Right.
And I told you, and I'll say it on stream, man, I just love the movement of those games. It's been a while.
Calls back to a time that was simpler.
Yeah, I've just got this muscle memory of just like feathering the trigger for like dashing repeatedly and then jumping over guys and then just like maneuvering in the air around them and then shooting through guys and enemies. And I mean, like, they're very clearly calling back to a lot of obvious connections to both Mega Man X and Mega Man Zero enemies and movement styles, but they're very fast, they're very fluid. It reminds me of a lot of fun times that I had playing those games. Yeah, as essentially as a kid, been maturing into an emo teenager, but because that was probably more accurately the time that
I guess as a young adult, perhaps.
Yeah. So yeah, I still kind of like have the same kind of memories, like physical hand memories of being able to play those games. I still like every time I can dash in a game that is side-scrolling, I apply it to a trigger because of Mega Man Zero. It's the same kind of mental kind of mapping to me. I usually have shoot on my right trigger, and I usually have melee attack on my X button or just the left button, and then jump on A on the bottom button there. So it's very similar in this case. Ace in the 30XX demo doesn't seem to have an alt fire kind of thing. He has they each have special moves, but they don't seem to have like a gun and a sword at the same time. They're very specialized in this way, but he does have special skills that make him resemble Zero in the Mega Man X game. So he does his Shoryuken move, and he does his like shooting upwards with the fireball move. So they're definitely special abilities that harken back to those games. It does a little bit different things. It does some sort of roguelike stuff. You get scrap essentially to
turn
buy.
Into permanent upgrades, I guess.
Well, I don't know about permanent upgrades.
Oh, really?
I think I haven't gotten far enough to I know I've gotten this sort of like cube-like thing to unlock something, but I know that scrap is per run. It seems like scrap is per run. So
gotcha.
you can get health back, and you can buy some of the special abilities for your run at least.
I see.
I played just like switching gears to something completely different. I played the Nuts demo.
Nuts.
Freaking hilarious. Yeah.
What an excellent name.
I know it was nuts. It's actually fun. It gives me very clear Firewatch vibes. So
Oh,
if
sure.
anybody like
I think that's the
Firewatch,
art style they're kind of going for, if not like exactly the kind of game.
nature hides the most secret of things is kind of like what it feels like it's sort of doing from a thematic standpoint, which I like that. It's cute, and then like if you just watch the trailer, it's like those squirrels are up to no good. It's kind of the feeling that you get from
What are those
just
squirrels
watching
doing?
it. I know, it's like, what's the secret behind the squirrels? What are they doing? And it's got that kind of cute kind of thing. I actually, I was bad at this game because it's a game essentially about triangulation. You're
Right.
supposed to
You set up your
pinpoint-
cameras and then
yeah,
you,
you
like,
set
try
your
to figure out.
cameras and you try to pinpoint where the squirrels are going during the night. And I was just horrible at it. I was like putting them on the rocks, and I was like, what? Like, where are they going, and where am I aiming this thing? I think part of it was that the first day, I thought you were just, well, maybe the second day, I thought you were just supposed to put the cameras down once and then find out on the tape where the squirrel was supposed to go, or was going. And she says, like, I see the squirrel, but I don't know. He doesn't seem to be at its final destination. Try watching it for a little bit longer. I'm like, okay, but I'm at the end of the tape and I didn't see where he went. And what you're supposed to do is just move the cameras again and then spend another night on it. And I was like, oh, it wasn't clear to me that I was supposed to be like,
Gotcha.
Tomorrow, try
It's
again.
like a slight miswording in the dialogue,
yeah,
perhaps.
maybe it was a little. Yeah, I was maybe a little confused about like, what? No, like I'm done. I'm at the end of the tape. I can't see anymore. Like, no, try again. Basically, like
Right.
you didn't see where the squirrel ended up. You need to try a little bit harder. Do your job a little bit better. Squirrel watch a little bit more.
What? Is there a backstory in that game, or is it really just like you're a dude who's very suspicious of, or a dude or a person who's very suspicious of squirrels?
No, it's not that. You're it's hilarious that's what you think based upon the video trailer of it. No, it's not that. It's
Okay.
it's kind of like Firewatch. You're essentially hired to be woods watchman kind of person. I don't know what it. You're not necessarily a ranger. You're just basically in this like trailer home
Gotcha.
kind of thing, investigating the squirrel's natural habitat. And so you're just, placing these cameras down and watching them. It's basically that. You're doing something sort of for research.
Okay.
So that one actually is kind of, if people are into
Overwatch.
I was about to say Overwatch. I have no idea why I was about to say that. If
Well,
you're into
Firewatch.
Firewatch, then it's kind of like got the same kind of atmosphere.
That's
It's got this
nuts.
cool shader too. It's that's this nuts we're talking about demo. There's a few other ones I think I can talk about very shortly, and I'll just go through them very quickly. We already talked about Cyberhook at the very beginning. That one is fun and interesting. The Dandy Ace demo, actually, just to go back onto the whole ARPG kind of thing, very interesting, cool style. It's a little. I actually didn't realize it was going to be. The thing it reminds me the most of, and I think very strongly, I don't know if this is very intentional of them, I feel like it is, but it's very Supergiant, very Supergiant.
No, I think it's very intentional. Like
yeah,
if you, so once again, this is Dandy Ace. If you play this game, like you'll see that their card system is exactly
It's
transistors.
transistor.
Yeah,
It's transistor.
Which is not a bad thing, because I think it's a shame that
no.
nobody's expanded on that system since.
Having essentially cards that have two functions, basically, like you have this is a primary function if it's in your primary slot, but then it can also support other cards if it's in the support slot. So cards always have like multi functions.
Yeah. So I think it's
cards is more
entirely
basically
intentional that Dandy Ace is calling back to Supergiant.
Yeah, for sure. And it's got that whole isometric style look. It's beautiful environments and things like that. So they're definitely doing a good job doing very strong visual style paired with interesting action RPG moments. It's Also a little bit slower than I'd like, mostly because you stand still in one place a little bit too much, I feel like.
Yeah, your abilities, do tend to lock you down a little bit.
Yeah, which I feel like Supergiant kind of solved with the Hades making a lot of your abilities kind of move you to the destination you want to go in, or make the combat a little more kinetic. In general, I'm more a fan of kinetic gameplay styles, but one of the reasons why I kind of understand Danny Ace does what it does is because most of the weapons and abilities are mostly your main attacks are mostly range based, so it's mostly just doing damage at a distance. So that's one of the reasons why I understand you kind of have to lock in place, because otherwise,
if you think about the Hades bow, even.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You lock in place there. So it's very deliberate and intentional. It does create some situations where I do get hit a little bit more often than I'd like as a result of just like having to stand still. Yeah, having to stand still a lot, but that's just, it's different design philosophies of what kind of game you want to make. I'll definitely be keeping an eye on it and seeing where it goes. Yeah. I played very cute game Skatebird. I played it back in the day when it was just like a small-ish demo. Cute little birds on skateboards. There is some sort of skateboard renaissance going on right now, especially with Skate 4 having been basically commented into existence. Yeah,
commented. That's right. They did say that.
I am sort of kind of just like, oh, you're just eating this up, aren't you? All these indie game developers paved the way for you, and now you're just gonna try to waltz on in with Skate 4, aren't you? Not that I have any complaint necessarily, but it's like, ooh, you left all the hard work for all the indie game developers to kind of revive this genre, and now you're gonna walk in with Tony Hawk Pro Skater Remix 1+2 and then Skate 4, and so I'm definitely looking forward to Skatebird and Skate Story at the same time as I am like looking at Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 and playing Goldfinger in the backgrounds with Tony Hawk and Skate 4. Looking forward to all those glitch videos that I'm gonna laugh at inevitably, because that's what happens.
Do you think so? I wonder if people are gonna be disappointed by that. We'll see.
I hope. I don't know.
I hope so. I hope it is still there, rather.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot more games that we could be talking about, but we're hitting the end of the hour here, and we'd like to be able to cut this short to make sure that everybody gets off scot-free from our voices, because we've been talking for a long time. So, is there anything you want to close us out with, Ed, or?
I think pretty much good here. Yeah, thank you so much for anybody that's still sticking around. This again is Breakpoint. It's our callback to retro action arcade games. You can check it out on the Steam Games Festival and try to beat the new top score, which is no longer me.
It's who?
It's who?
Exactly. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. This is us signing off. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.